Hey, once again, I'm Otis Smith, your host of Interruption Podcast. Um, Please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. Go to Otis Allen Smith, the number 3, and my YouTube channel will pull up. Leave your comments. Um, Let me know who you like for me to interview, and I'll try to get a hold of them and see if we can make that request a reality. Coming up next is a brilliant actor and a soulful, quiet, still singing voice of Terron Brooks. You've seen him, my backdrop, you've seen him play Eddie Kendricks on the Temptations biopic. He was also in the movie All About You. So please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe. That's Otis Allen Smith, the number 3. And please subscribe, leave your comments. Coming up next on the Interruption Podcast, Terron Brooks. Welcome to another edition of Interruptions. I'm your host, Otis Smith. Today, we got another treat for you. This guy is all that I have it next to me is a soulful balladeer, has a kind of like a quiet, still voice, a wonderful falsetto. He's also a good actor, a brilliant actor. We've seen him on the Temptation biopic playing Eddie Kendricks, which lets you know this man can really sing. I also had a chance to see him in a movie my wife and I enjoy called All About You. I'm talking no other than the brilliant actor, Terron Brooks. How you doing, sir?
I'm blessed, brother. Glad to be with you.
Good, good. Thank you for coming on. We don't take it lightly that you blessed us with your presence. My first question for you is, you're a real vocalist. And when did you decide that acting and singing was going to be a passion of yours? Because, singing is, that's just a gift that God gave you, the ability to sing. But when did you bring in also the acting part and then both just became something that you wanted to do?
Well, man, I to tell you the truth, I don't know if it was a master plan of mine. Um, I think I kind of fell into it when I was young. Of course, sang at 6 years old in the choir, or forced to sing. I don't even know if I really loved to sing till much later on in life. But I think I went to a performing arts high school. So I think when you are a singer, and we know many, many singers who can sing well, but if you can't communicate, then all you're doing is watching or listening for a good singer. And after a certain amount of time, that wears off if you're not knowing how to communicate. So acting per se is when you're playing another character, you're still bringing something that from an experience of truth that you have to kind of think about. When you're singing a song, it's almost the same intention. There's a purpose between these lyrics that I kind of want to communicate. And being a shy kid, I was such a shy kid, I needed to be drawn out of my shell. So I think that's where the acting started. And then I started to put them hand in hand and believe that I could do more than just that one thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So I think the acting actually helps me be a better songwriter, a better performer, a better communicator of the thing that I love the most, which is music. And then I just love inspiration altogether. So if it becomes a role where I'm acting and maybe I'm not singing, fortunately for me, some of those worlds come together all the time. Then I look at it the same way. Who is this character? Who is this man? Who's this person I'm playing? How can I inhabit this person and tell the truth and communicate with my skill that I've been given? So I do believe they come hand in hand. And people ask me all the time which one I prefer. And of course, like you said, I think I was born with the gift that God gave me. So I always will gravitate to music. But my answer really is whatever medium gets me to be able to inspire other people. I don't really care what it is,
Yeah, like you said, you was born with the gift to sing, because you can't sing falsetto unless you're born with that. Like, there's some people can sing, but it's very few. I mean, man, when you can just stay in the falsetto range and sing, that's a God-given gift, man. That's a God-given gift. And I understand what you're talking about, because in the song, when you're singing, you have to convey something. You have to come across especially the songs that you sing when I was on your YouTube channel listening to your music. You have to be able to convey that. Those are not just songs that you just sing and say, okay, yeah, he can say. No, you have to convey, which what you say. Everybody can't do that. Some people can sing, but they can't convey the message in the song, and
Yeah, well,
and that's when they say, oh, that's a hard song to sing.
yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the hardest part is not the singing. The hardest part is the revealing, is the
Right.
exposing. It's the connection to be able to say that I'm human. I have these emotions, and I'm going to let you know how it feels, and then I'm going to sing it to you. It's a very, very vulnerable thing to do. So
Hmm.
I get it. I'm not saying it's an easy thing to do, but I don't want to do it unless I go all the way to a place where I feel like I have something to share, so that you will be able to feel something, not just able to hear something. And the biggest compliment
Sure.
that I can ever get is if someone says, you made me feel, you made me think about
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
I could hear all day long, you're good, you're good, you're great, you did that riff, you know what I mean, whatever. But
Hmm.
but yeah, if I can affect people, I think that, and that takes some courage, and some work.
Because you're making yourself vulnerable. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. For you, what was it like for you being on Broadway? You playing Simba in the Lion King, and doing that theater as well. So what was Broadway like for you?
Well, Broadway, I my theme of my life is impossible dreams. You know what I mean? There's
Okay.
dreams you can think of that are really easy to attain. And then
Okay.
there's just like these other things that you're like, I cannot believe this is happening. So I'm not gonna lie and say Broadway was always my vision. And when I got there, yeah, I finally arrived. That was something really extraordinary for me. And I cherish that, because Broadway, even to this day, is the highest level
Yeah.
where you could
Yeah.
be in New York. I say that in one hand, and I also say that I've been on many, many stages that weren't Broadway, and I still was performing with extraordinary people. So that is something we covet and we kind of lift up.
Right.
But to be a young man, in New York City, and one of the biggest shows in the world, I still kind of like slap myself. Like, this is a reality. I'll have to, tell you that it was about 7 auditions to be able to get cast in the show. So there's sometimes where you do persevere and you go,
Hmm.
I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go back. And then there's sometimes you have to let go and say, this might not be for me. But fortunately for Lion King, the persistence was the thing that actually got me on that stage. And man, if you've seen The Lion King, it's not a cartoon. It's not the cartoon. It's
No,
very
no, no.
spiritual. It's
Right.
very artistic. The artistry, but also the humanity, that the story that we're telling, with there's Black men and women, kings and
Hmm.
queens on the stage. It was such a great thing for me to be a part of. So to answer your question, it was still to this day something that I go, wow, I don't know if I thought that could be possible, but if that can be possible, right, then this could be possible, and
Possible. Yeah.
that can be possible, and maybe
Yeah.
that can be possible. So those things that happen in our lives are indicators of what's to come, because we always like to look back and go, wow, I sure wish I could go back, and I
Right.
sure,
Yeah. Yeah. You're
and
right.
you can't go back, but you can look back and you can see where you've come from in order to inform, where you might go. And that's the cool thing about being on Broadway with those people, the work ethic, and the family that we created, even to this day. Both shows, Hairspray and Lion King, I still have family, friends that I
That you
made.
connect with.
Yeah, yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is because what you kind of alluded to in your answer is that a lot of times, especially for us as Blacks, it was always they were off Broadway. It was a good play, good stage, but it was off Broadway. So anytime I see no, he or she was on Broadway, to me that's a big thing, because we're not always on Broadway. you know so that's why, just the context of why I asked that question. So and you answered it like, ooh, that wasn't even a goal of yours, but like you said, if you accomplish it, what else can I do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's changing from when I was in it, but the opportunities are there for people. But there's still, man, how many people right now that nobody's ever heard of. You know what I mean? Great singers, great actresses, or performers. And so, I just encourage people to say, you make these things, these goals,
Yes.
you make them so definitive in your life, right? And they should be something for you to attain. But if you don't make Broadway, or you don't
Hmm.
I still don't have a record deal. You know what I mean? So, if you magnify those things so much, right, you
Okay.
miss the journey of what you're already being able to and blessed to do. And so I also want to say, as much as that's exciting, and I've done some
Sure.
exciting things, I really understand, even to this day,
Hmm.
feeling disappointed, feeling like I'm the underdog, feeling like the doors aren't opening for me, And there's two things you can do. You can be bitter, resentful, sit and wait for something to happen. Well, like
Hmm.
I've done, I've created shows, I've written
Yes.
music, I
Yes.
have a book, I've written things just to be able to get my art out there. Are you going to do it for money, or are you going to do it anyway?
Man, you speaking to me, man. I appreciate you saying that. No, because it's one of those things. Chris, you kind of said something. Chris Broussard, the sports analyst, told me. He said so many people, like you just said, like you have an end goal, right? And like for him, like so many people want to be on ESPN or whatever sports show. And he said you have a podcast. He says so. Don't forget to be great at what you're doing right now. So, like you said, the process, you trying to get to this end goal, or like you said, you're trying to get on Broadway, or you're trying to get on the movies. But before you get there, you forget to be great in the present moment. And that's why you can't get there either, because you're
Because
trying to take a shortcut.
and when the opportunity comes, you don't have time to be great. You don't have time to get great the night
Right,
before some big opportunity that you have. In your life right now, you're making all of those mistakes, right? You're
right.
having all those epiphanies, you're having all those growth and expansion moments for that moment when they call you. You've been ready, and you'll be able to walk into that situation with more confidence. I think so.
Oh,
I want them to find me. I'm not
right.
necessarily trying to find them. You find me and see what I'm already doing. So that's very valuable, man. And people are watching, and people are influenced by what you do. You look at anybody great, they could not go from 1 to 100. There were
Correct.
steps that were taken, and a lot of people that go from 1 to 100 in those special
Hmm.
situations
Hmm.
have problems. We see that now with
Yes.
a lot of our young people. You see that even with the Temptations, like they got all that money, all that fame, but they were young. They
Yeah.
skipped they skipped a lot of steps. They weren't grinding and grinding. I mean, they had different groups and stuff. So then when you skip those steps, sometimes it's great, but then sometimes there's things that happen because you don't have time to have that maturity. You don't know what that light looks like on you. You don't even kind of know yourself. So I
Mm.
feel very fortunate, to be able to, take my time and be ready, because some of the things I thought I wanted at 25, I'm like, I don't want that.
I don't want that. Yeah, yeah, and that's why I've always had a heart for, especially athletes, right? Because you're giving them a lot in a short period of time, and you're
Sure.
expecting someone 21, 22, or like you said, 25, to know what to do with money and fame like they're
Mhm.
40 or 50, and that's almost impossible. There's very few people who are mature enough. So I'm glad, like you said, they even using, like you said, the Temptations, they're coming into that business that young. People forget that they were that young,
Yeah, they were.
and you still trying to figure out what kind of man you want to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I get it. What did you take from the stage um, and implement in film? What did you learn? And the reason I'm asking this question, to give you some context, I had the pleasure to interview actress Renee Lawless,
Yeah.
and she said to me, people with theater background have a base to pull from that someone who just took acting classes, they don't have that base. They don't have the same base.
Yeah.
And so with you having that theater background, what were you able to pull from theater and implement in the films that you've been in?
Well, I think there's a certain level of perseverance when you're on stage. You know, if you're doing eight shows a week on Broadway, right? So you're building up something that maybe 1 or 2 acting classes a month or a week or something. That consistency, that's the word I was looking for. The consistency of being in the theater and the training and having to do that night and draw on those emotions night after night. And although it's the same script that you're doing every single day, you still have to remember to keep it fresh for people that haven't seen it before, right? And so that access that I had when I did The Temptations, man, that was my first film. So I was in some ways terrified, didn't know what I was doing. But I did have a basis of, okay, I know how to hard work. I know how to approach what this is, right? And I have the endurance, the stamina, and I know if I can be consistent, I'll learn. I can learn. But sometimes it's different for people that come from a different background. So for me, you know, the hardest things for The Temptations for me as an actor were some of the technical things that I just did, but I knew how to perform and I knew what to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
I just had to learn some of those technical things. So I say that consistency. You know, there were times, you know, where like when you're doing a film or TV, you're waiting a long, long time. You got to be ready when they call you and you're waiting a long, long time. In the theater, you might be on stage the whole time. You might be, so there's I think there's a different conditioning. Not to say that one's better or the other, but I do think that, to answer your question specifically, that informed my success when I was on film or television sets. I kind of knew what that was.
And that's she said pretty much the same thing. Her, Scott McBryce, who played on As the World Turned, and Jay Bernard, who's on the Miss Pat show. All you guys have theater background, and it's just nice to hear like it's the same, that the muscle memory that you have because of so many times that you're and making it fresh on stage, right? To even if you're going to TV or film, for you guys, for them to say, okay, do it again, another take is not really difficult for you. Yeah, you just like, oh, I bet, hey, that's okay, cool.
That's what we're here to do. Yeah, that's what we're here to do. They do it again, you know. Or if I'm going to throw something at you different, right? You know, if I'm doing live theater and the audience is talking back, right? Or if I'm doing live theater and at a certain line where they laugh every night, they didn't laugh this night. I mean, there's so much to pay attention to in that live setting that when you do get to a situation on film or TV, you do have a little bit of that flexibility to change it up, especially I think on the auditions, because I had to learn that in audition when I prepare something and then the director saying, can you do it like this? And you gotta, yes, I can, but you gotta flip so fast and be very flexible from the idea that you might have had and take your hands off and go, okay, yeah, you know.
Okay. Talk to me about your music style that you've created for yourself, because listening to your music, like I said, you're one that you convey, even when you redid Tomorrow. All right.
Yeah.
Now we know the song Tomorrow. We know it, but you put your own spin and you conveyed it a little bit differently than I've heard it before.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think my gifts might be is interpretation, right? I love to take a song and find my own interpretation, find my own angle with it. And I'll say that took years for me to be able to accomplish that as an artist, because, you know, my influences are Michael Jackson, Babyface, Brian McKnight, Fred Hammond, Winans, Tony Braxton, Anita Baker, all these people that you have that you love, you know, and you're trying to find yourself in it, you know. Gotcha. I think through the years, I only found my mix of what I am. So if you give me a song, I know how to make it Terron. I know how to make it mine, you know, which I did with the song you're hearing. So I would say my style, you know, is like this pop soul thing. I live in these two worlds. It's embedded in soul. It's embedded in, you know, I sang gospel music. It's
sure.
I have that soul thing, but I really love some of the classics, some of the standard songs. Popular music.
I hear that. Yes.
So I love a John Mayer. You know, I love a lot of these artists out there. So I like to kind of mix that soul with pop. And even in my, as a worship leader at church, I do the same thing. It's that gospel, but it's also that contemporary Christian flair. Then you kind of put them together. I think that's what
So you really got to convey there, because if you lead in worship at church, you most definitely have to be able to convey your sentiments that you have with your personal walk with God, to be able to help usher in the people in a corporate setting into the presence of God. So
that's where it starts. So that's where it starts for me, because as a worship leader or a person of faith, let's just say that, because we all, if we believe, whatever, that vulnerability that I have to have before I talk about my career or my singing career and all that, that vulnerability that I have to have with God, first of all, is in preparation for all the things that I do in my life. So I'm glad that we mentioned that just a little bit, because that's kind of who I am. And when I lead worship, it ain't about trying to impress people. It's about really saying, I'm having the worst day today. I have lost my faith today. I don't know where the money's come today. I am sick in my body, whatever, but I'm going to stand here and I'm going to convey this message, not for you, but with you,
Correct.
And I think that's my basis of how I do everything else, is that certain vulnerability, because let's be real, churches, sometimes you got to dress up, you got to play, you got to act like you fine, and that's the furthest thing from
trust me, I'm with you, because trust me, I've sung in a youth choir as a kid, and the minister of music at that time was a major in music, and so we had to learn how to convey the message. And that's where I was going when I said earlier, where sometimes people are like, that's a hard song to sing, and that's because, like you said, you haven't personalized it yet, and so
Absolutely.
the words haven't become real. So what you're doing is you're just singing words that hadn't became real to you. So that's why it feels so difficult to sing it, because you haven't personalized
it. Can't connect to it.
Yeah. So I'm glad for that. Talk to me about filming the Temptations, and when you were filming the Temptation, knowing the historical far as the group, but learning different things. What did you learn? What did you take away for yourself in that project?
Well, we talked about a little bit earlier, this thing about becoming a man. And I think I was so young. I was 23 when I got cast, as Eddie Kendricks in that. But I think these Black young men were really trying to find who they were in the middle of the biggest avalanche of success that they weren't really expecting. And I think that's kind of how I was trying to find out in my own personal life the same way. Who am I? What is my integrity? And I think I connected with Eddie Kendricks because, as if you watch the film, you understand how much he coveted his relationship with his best friend, Paul. How much integrity he wanted to bring to the group. He was always trying to figure out, why are we doing this? This doesn't make sense. Or what are we standing for? What are we? And I think those are themes that every man in the Temptation was trying to figure out for themselves, and as well as I was trying to figure out for myself. So I really do think that that's kind of my takeaway. What I learned about the whole thing is just how we said earlier, how young they were, and impressionable they were, and I'm not going to say they were taken advantage of. I'm not going to get into all of that, but it was just like this new world. And all they really wanted to do same with David Ruffin, all they wanted to do was sing, Then you get to the business part of it and the reality of, making hits and staying power and personal relationships and all of that. And, it could be a recipe for disaster, and I love that young people to this day are learning about the Temptations from a film like that.
Oh man, we love it. I that's why it makes me think what you just said. One of the lines weren't written, and I think it sounds like you improvised it, far as, because you just said what they stood for. And I remember the scene with you, Otis, and Blue at the hospital. Paul was at the
Yeah.
hospital. And I'm gonna tell you something. I took flack from my family all day, but I was riding with you on that. When you said, "Man, who the group stand for? What sacrifices did the group make?" And I felt where you was coming from, because you were looking at sometimes, if
Mm-hmm.
like you look at the group TLC.
Yes.
So you look, when Left Eye passed, they didn't just bring another person in the group and just say, they just said, okay, if we go on with us two, but there will not be a third member. And that
Yeah.
was kind of like Eddie's character. He was like, look, man, you trying to go through them like Alabama trash, man. You can't keep you and then my other part, what I really loved about the way you played it, is you stood on your principles.
Yeah.
You say, look, at Paul ain't on that stage. It was like, he was like, look, I didn't say it. Now, you was like, let Paul not walk out on that stage and see you had two members not on that stage. So
Well, yeah, that's a personal responsibility, that Eddie had, you know what I mean? Because when you look at the beginning of how they were formed, right?
yes,
It was Eddie and Paul, and then
it
Otis
was
brought,
in Blue.
and
Yeah,
so to this day, God bless them. The Temptations are all over the world. I got a friend who's actually in the group now, So there are these ideals that, maybe it should have ended,
you talking about Tony?
Yeah, yeah.
That's
Uh,
my boy. That's my boy.
Yeah, Tony's my friend. So I think the show could go on. You question, is it the Temptations? Is it just a new group? You know what I mean?
Right.
Because what Eddie had felt in the equity that he put into this. That what do you mean? There's no Temptations without Paul. There's no, and maybe he was naive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and that the jury is out on that.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I definitely identified with that, and those are the decisions that I have to make as a performer and as a family man personally right
Sure.
now. Am I going to just take the money? Am I going to do anything, or do I have a value system where it says, you know what, it's not worth that? And everybody has to make that decision. There's no wrong or right, I don't think.
It's funny that you say that, because, and I'm just gonna go. I had it as the last question, but since you touched on it, I gotta go ahead and just, like I said, I'm riding shotgun, which
Sure.
is, talk to me about how you stay true to yourself, because I see you the same way I saw Erica Gimple when I had the pleasure of interviewing her, and just playing Coco on Fame and seeing her all this stuff. And then I saw somebody that once again, like yourself, sings a lot of standard, a lot of that style of music, right? A good actress, like you said. But it's like, why am I not seeing them in more stuff? And then just
Mm.
having a chance to sit and talk to you in this interview form that we're doing, I said, and they're true to themselves. They're not just gonna take something just because it's a gig.
Well, you can roll the credits. I think you answered.
He said roll the
Uh,
credits.
yeah, I used to want to blame people. I used to
Hmm.
want to say it's them,
Okay.
it's them, it's them. Why am I not? Why am I? Why not? And then it hit me. My priority is my family. My
Hmm.
priority is my faith, is my belief.
Okay.
And I do think that the best is yet to come. And I do think that how I measure success, bro, is that when I go to sleep at night,
Hmm.
I can sleep at night. You know what I
Got
mean?
you.
Like I
Got you.
got peace. So there's a lot of things that come my way that I have to
Hmm.
decide if that makes sense for me. There's a lot of things that I don't chase. And there's a lot of things that I have to look in the mirror and go, if I want to chase that, I can. So I can spend my life blaming everybody else for what you don't see or what you don't,
Hmm.
but that's not how I live my life, because I want to say to the person that you spoke about, I don't take myself too
Right.
seriously. I am more than just the career talented
Yes.
person trying to get a deal or a
Hmm.
gig, right?
Hmm.
I'm on this earth as a husband, as a father. I got responsibilities that I take seriously, right?
Got
And
you.
with everything in life, and everybody got to make these decisions. When you have
Hmm.
24 hours in a day, what you choose to do, is important. And I've chosen to live my life as an inspiration, not perfect, trying to find the best of what I am so I can give that. And sometimes the opportunities that have come my way or have not presented the best of me. And they would have made me a lot of money and all that, but then there would have been a sacrifice that I'm not willing to make because it's not that serious. I really know who I am. I really know why I'm here. And I love all the stuff I've been able to do, but it doesn't define me, right?
Gotcha.
So we talked about it earlier, man. You know, we can wrap it up, but I know it's going to find me, and whatever success is it's going to find me doing what I want to do. And then I will dictate what that ride is, as opposed to being dragged on by somebody else, you know. And you see that in our industry, so many people are losing themselves.
And that's why I kind of figured that it's just your demeanor, so I'm glad I wasn't off. You know, sometimes people try to say stuff and you be sitting there like, man, they do way off. I don't know what they talking about. But before I let you go, I just want to ask you this. In the movie All About You, that final song, what was that song?
The surprise song, right? Yeah.
Surprise, because it was like you were saying this was your guarantee, because
So the song
what's the title?
It's called Surprise.
Surprise. Okay.
Yeah. And we took those lyrics from the scene with me and the actress Renee, my friend Renee. We took those lyrics because the movie was called what was it called?
All About You.
Yeah, but before it was called Love the Way. It had another iteration.
Okay.
And we had all these other songs that we were going to use. And at the last minute, one of the writers pulled out. And so Renee and I actually wrote a lot of music for this new version, All About You. So Renee wrote that song, Surprise. Yeah, you know, and took the lyrics from that. So people love that song because when you're watching the movie, you kind of, he said that. Now he's actually singing that.
And that's why I would love to see you redo that and put that out. I think that would make, and I know you know this, a great wedding song, because that's actually, man, to be honest with you, that's when I said, oh, so he was actually singing on the tip. Oh, okay. Because I knew you couldn't be lip syncing in both movies, because
that's a great idea, man. I never really thought about actually redoing that song as like a wedding song or like a song. And I'm gonna take you up on that idea. I think it's a great idea. And the Temptations, man, I just want to be clear, if anybody has seen it, I did sing almost 90% of everything in the Temptations. And Eddie's voice is I think there's a song called Paradise that Eddie's singing. And the first time you hear the way you do the things you do, that's Eddie's voice. But a lot of people, it's a compliment to me, but I didn't get the credit so people knew that was me, because I did not lip sync. I lip synced to myself.
Yeah, you would. That when I saw that movie All About You, me and my wife, because we was watching, we said, oh, so he was actually singing, and we put 2 to 2. So, man, thank you for coming on the show, blessing us with your presence. I would love to bring you back on the show and pair you up actually with Erica and Jay Bernard, got you guys who have that theater background, and just kind of talk about, you know, some stuff, all 3 of you guys together. So when your schedule permits, you know, I'm gonna reach back out to you and see if we can make that happen. But I appreciate you, man. I love your attitude. I love who you are as a person and as a talent. Just please, for me, just stay safe out there, man. Continue to be blessed like you are, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I want to tell you, you know, I appreciate what you're doing too. I follow what you're doing, and it's very, very important to uplift people and shine a light on people, so people can see the behind the scenes of how people live and who they are. And you do that very, very well. So anytime, man, have me back.
Appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Thanks, man.
Peace.